My name is Lauren Hayes, and for most of my adult life, I was the reliable one. Not the favorite, not the loud one, not the one anyone worried about, just the one who handled things. I was 32, living overseas for work, when my mother called me at 3 in the morning my time. I remembered the exact sound of the ringtone because I'd trained myself to wake up instantly for it. Emergency calls didn't wait for business hours. Her voice was already shaking when I answered. "Lauren, I didn't want to bother you, but the electricity company sent another notice. Your dad's been so stressed since the surgery. I just don't know what we're going to do." I sat up in bed, rubbing sleep out of my eyes, already reaching for my phone with the other hand. "How much?" I asked. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. "Just until Friday. I hate asking you, you know that." She always said that. I sent the money before the call even ended. That was how it usually went. No arguments, no discussions, just quiet fixes, handled quickly so no one had to feel uncomfortable for long. By the time I hung up, my heart was already slowing down, my body slipping back into autopilot. I told myself it was temporary. I had been telling myself that for nearly 10 years. I grew up in a modest house in Southern California. Nothing dramatic, nothing abusive, just a family that slowly learned how useful I could be. My dad, Gary, was the kind of man who believed stress was proof of masculinity. He worked hard, complained harder, and never quite recovered financially from a string of bad decisions he blamed on everyone but himself. My mom, Elaine, managed emotions the way some people manage inventories. She knew exactly which buttons to press and when. She didn't demand help, she implied need. Then there was my older brother, Jason. Jason had charm. Jason had confidence. Jason had plans that never quite worked out. Businesses that almost took off. Jobs that were temporary setbacks. Somehow, he always landed back on his feet, usually because someone else broke the fall. That someone was often me. I was the youngest, the organized one, the kid who followed instructions and turned in permission slips early. I got scholarships. I took internships. I learned early that being low maintenance made life easier for everyone else. By the time I graduated and landed a steady UX design job, my family had already decided who I was. Lauren has it together. Lauren can help. Lauren will understand. And I did. At first, it really was small things. Covering a late car payment, sending grocery money when Jason's hours got cut, helping my parents bridge the gap during a rough month. They always paid me back. Until they didn't. When I moved overseas for work, the calls increased. The time difference made everything feel more urgent. If I didn't answer, my phone filled with missed calls and messages stacked with anxiety. "I'm sorry to do this over text. I know you're busy, honey. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." Sometimes the request came wrapped in guilt, sometimes wrapped in love, often wrapped in both. By the third year, I stopped keeping track of what was a loan and what was a gift. It was easier that way. Less confrontation, less disappointment. I told myself that families helped each other. I didn't notice when help became expected. The Christmas before everything changed, my mother insisted I come home. "We don't know how many holidays your dad has left feeling this way," she said softly over FaceTime. "The kids ask about you all the time." I booked the flight. When I landed, jet-lagged and carrying one suitcase, my mom opened the door and immediately glanced past my face. "You brought it," she said, relieved. "Brought what?" I asked. She looked confused, then laughed it off. "Oh, nothing. Come in. You must be exhausted." Inside, the house looked the same. Same couch, same framed family photos, same subtle tension humming under everything. Jason's kids were sprawled across the living room, tablets blaring cartoons. Jason himself barely looked up from his phone. "Hey, little sis, good timing. The Wi-Fi's been acting up." I smiled, already tired. That night, after dinner, my dad brought out a stack of envelopes and set them on the table like a deck of cards. "Not now," my mom said quickly, glancing at me. "It's fine," I said, though my stomach had already tightened. "What's going on?" Dad sighed heavily. "Medical bills, property tax, truck payment. We're just trying to get through the end of the year." Jason leaned back in his chair. "You know how it is. Everything's more expensive now." No one asked directly. They didn't have to. I pulled out my laptop. Later that night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I stared at the ceiling and felt something unfamiliar creeping in beneath the guilt. Resentment. Not explosive, not angry, just quiet. I opened my banking app and scrolled through transaction after transaction. Transfers labeled family, rent help, utilities. Just this once. The total made my chest tighten. I realized something then that I hadn't allowed myself to think before. They weren't struggling temporarily. They were budgeting me in. And for the first time in 10 years, I wondered what would happen if I wasn't there to cover the gap. I didn't confront them that night. I closed my laptop, rolled onto my side, and told myself I was overthinking things. Families helped each other. That was normal. That was healthy. I repeated those words until sleep finally took me. But once the thought had formed, it didn't go away. After I flew back overseas, I started noticing patterns I'd ignored for years. The timing of the calls, the phrasing of the messages, the way emergencies always seemed to arrive right before paydays. It wasn't chaos, it was routine. 2 weeks after Christmas, my mom texted me a photo of a letter from the bank. "Just so you're not blindsided," she wrote. "They're saying the mortgage needs attention again. Don't worry, we'll figure it out." I stared at the image longer than I should have. My name was on it, not just as a contact, as a co-borrower. I felt a slow chill move through me. I searched my email, scrolling back years, heart pounding harder with every archived message. There it was, an old thread I barely remembered. My parents had refinanced when I was in my mid-20s. They'd framed it as paperwork. "Just a formality," my dad had said. "It helps us get a better rate," my mom added. "You won't actually be responsible," Jason chimed in. At the time, I'd trusted them. Now, looking at that letter, I realized I hadn't just been helping, I had been legally tethered. I started documenting everything, not out of spite, out of clarity. Every transfer, every "just this once," every message that thanked me vaguely and promised repayment someday. The numbers stacked faster than I expected. When my dad had knee surgery, I'd sent money for incidentals. When Jason's e-commerce venture collapsed, I'd paid off 2 maxed-out credit cards. When the water heater died, the electric bill followed. When the electric bill fell behind, so did the property taxes. Each problem was presented as isolated. Together, they told a very different story. Meanwhile, their lifestyle didn't match their desperation. My mom posted photos from brunch spots I couldn't afford in the city I lived in. Jason upgraded his phone twice in 1 year. My dad bought a new flat-screen TV and called it recovery morale. Whenever I hinted at tightening things up, the tone shifted. "You make it sound like we're irresponsible. We're not asking for much. You don't understand how hard things are here." They weren't lying, they were omitting, and omission can be just as manipulative. The breaking point didn't come with a fight. It came with an itinerary. That summer, my mom sent me a glossy PDF titled "Family Getaway, Finally." It was a week-long resort trip, flights, hotel, excursions, everything booked. "I know it looks expensive," she said quickly when I asked about it, "but we deserve one good thing, don't we? The kids have had such a hard year." I noticed the payment confirmation attached at the bottom. It was my card number, not one I'd given her recently, one she'd saved years ago. "I didn't authorize this," I said carefully. "Oh, honey," she laughed nervously, "it was just easier than bothering you in the middle of work. We assumed you'd be okay with it. We can sort it out later. Later. That word landed differently now. I canceled the transaction immediately. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. 3 days passed. Then Jason called. "You really embarrassed Mom," he said without greeting. "That money was already allocated. Dad's blood pressure's been through the roof." I waited. "You didn't even ask why I canceled it," I finally said. He scoffed. "Because we know why. You're stressed. You live alone. You forget what family is." There it was, the unspoken contract. My independence was framed as selfishness, my boundaries as betrayal. That night, I booked a consultation with a financial advisor, not to punish them, to understand what I'd been dragged into. The call lasted an hour. By the end, my hands were shaking. "You're not wrong to feel uncomfortable," she said gently. "You've been carrying financial responsibility without authority or transparency. That dynamic rarely ends well unless it's addressed directly." I asked her what would happen if I stopped. She didn't sugarcoat it. "They'll feel it immediately," she said, "and they won't like it." When my mom called again a week later, crying about another overdue notice, I didn't send money. I asked questions instead. How much exactly? What's the plan? What happens next month? She didn't have answers. She just had urgency. And for the first time, I didn't resolve it for her. The next time I flew home was for what I believed would be a conversation. They believed it would be business as usual. When I arrived, exhausted and carrying gifts for the kids, my mom barely let me step inside before handing me a printed babysitting schedule. "You'll stay with them while we're gone," she said, like it was already decided. "This trip has been non-refundable for weeks." Jason grinned from the hallway. "Don't worry," he joked. "They're used to Aunt Lauren." They all laughed. I didn't. Something inside me went quiet. Not angry. Resolved. I looked at the suitcase in my hand, then at the kitchen table where the resort itinerary sat like a promise built on my silence. And I realized something with absolute clarity. They hadn't invited me home. They'd summoned me. And this time, I wasn't going to play my part. I didn't say anything right away. I set my suitcase down near the door and walked into the kitchen like nothing was wrong. The house looked the same as it always had, clean on the surface, cluttered underneath. Mail stacked on the counter, a blinking router light they never seemed to understand, my dad's prescription bottles lined up beside a brand new espresso machine. Paid for, I knew now, by me. "Dinner's in an hour," she said, already turning back to her phone. "You'll take the kids after we eat." Jason printed their bedtime routine. Printed. Like this was a job. I nodded, went to the guest room, and closed the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands until the shaking stopped. I had flown across an ocean, taken time off work, rearranged my life, just to be slotted back into a role I had never agreed to. That was the moment I stopped protecting their feelings. After dinner, while Jason wrangled the kids into pajamas, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. My dad noticed first. "What are you working on?" he asked suspiciously. "Just something I need to show you," I said calmly. My mom frowned. "Can it wait? We're running late." "No," I replied, "it can't." Something in my voice made them sit down. I turned the screen toward them. A spreadsheet filled the display. Rows and rows. Dates, amounts, notes. I scrolled slowly. "Every month," I said, keeping my tone even, "for 3 years." I highlighted a section. "This isn't counting streaming services or phone plans or groceries or the random Venmo requests that always lined up with holiday sales." Jason stepped closer, his smirk fading as he recognized his own words in the notes column. "I'll pay you back next month, just until things stabilize. Emergency." My mom's hand flew to her mouth when she saw screenshots of her texts beside deposits for gas money, followed by photos she'd posted from a new nail salon the same day.
My dad leaned forward when he saw a PayPal transfer labeled knee surgery copay and the receipt for a flat-screen TV dated 3 days later. "This isn't fair," my mom whispered. "You're making us look bad." I shook my head. "I'm not making you look like anything. I'm just showing you what happened." I scrolled to the bottom. The final row was bolded. The number sat there heavy and undeniable. "In the last 36 months," I said quietly, "I've sent just over $60,000 to this house." Silence swallowed the room. Jason stared at the screen like it might change if he blinked hard enough. My dad's jaw tightened. My mom kept whispering, "That can't be right, that can't be right," like repetition could erase math. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thin stack of papers. "This," I said, sliding them onto the table, "is a simple agreement, not a lawsuit, not a threat, just a record that you acknowledge this money was not a gift." My dad finally snapped out of his shock. "We're family," he barked. "You don't put family in debt. What are you going to sue your own parents?" I met his eyes. "Family doesn't hide a mortgage in their daughter's name and call her when the payment's late. Family doesn't spend her money on vacations and then tell people she abandoned them."
My mom flinched. Jason grabbed the papers, skimming the first page. "This is insane," he said, voice cracking. "None of us can pay this back." "I know," I said. "I'm not expecting it all at once, or maybe not at all. What I'm done with is pretending this never happened." I leaned back. "If you ever tell anyone I left you with nothing, I will show them these numbers. Every transfer, every bill, every time you chose convenience because you knew I'd cover it." My mom shook her head. "You wouldn't humiliate your own family." "I'm not planning to," I said calmly, "as long as you stop lying." Then I clicked to another tab. The resort reservation filled the screen. Their names, their dates, my card. "And about that trip you're excited about," I added, "you might want to sit down." My dad frowned. "What are you talking about?" I pointed to the status line. "Canceled." "I called 3 days ago," I said. "Since it was booked on my account, I had the right. The refund's already processing." My dad shot up from his chair. "You had no right." "They were bought with my money," I replied. "That makes it my decision." He opened his mouth to argue, but I was already clicking again. "And that brings me to the house we're sitting in." An email from the bank appeared. Both our names, co-borrowers. My mom's voice broke. "We told you that was just paperwork." "You told me it wouldn't affect me," I said, "but every missed payment hit my credit too." I opened a video call. My financial advisor appeared on the screen. "I'm here," she said politely. My dad hissed. "Who is that?" "The person who explained exactly what being tied to your debt means," I answered. In calm language, she explained my rights: refinancing, removal from the loan, possible sale if they couldn't qualify. My mom started shaking. "You can't do this," she said. "We can't afford to move." "That's between you and the lender," the advisor replied gently. "Lauren is not obligated to keep absorbing risk." I ended the call. The room felt smaller. "You're really going to do this?" my dad said. "You're going to ruin us." I stood up. "No," I said. "I'm going to stop letting you ruin me." I pulled out another letter. "This is my notice. I'm ending all automatic payments. The bank will contact you directly." My mom gasped. "But that's how we pay groceries, utilities." I took a breath. "The same way everyone else does," I said, "with their own money." I opened my laptop one last time and hovered over the cancel buttons. Mortgage supplements, utilities, subscriptions. Jason's voice rose. "At least give us time." "You've had years," I replied. And then I clicked. One by one. Confirmation emails began to arrive, and as the last one hit my inbox, I realized this wasn't revenge. It was the end of a lie. I opened the door. She stepped inside and looked around slowly. "I didn't know it was like this," she said softly. "I always imagined you in something bigger. This is what I can afford." I replied, when I'm only paying for one household. She winced. Then she reached into the bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check. Not for 60,000, not even close, but it was real. I sold things, she said quickly, and I'm picking up extra shifts. It's not much, but it's a start. I stared at it. It wasn't about the amount. It was about her standing there, finally understanding. She sat on the couch and cried quietly. Not the dramatic kind, the honest kind. "Your father still says you betrayed us," she whispered, "but I can't keep repeating it. Not after the letters, not after the bank." She looked at me. "We used you." I did. I didn't rush to comfort her. I let the truth sit between us. "Jason's working. Really working. He sent a picture once, months later. His kids eating pizza on the floor of their smaller apartment, laughing. No caption, no guilt, just proof. My mom sent a check every few months. Small amounts. Consistent. She didn't call it repayment, but we both knew what it was. As for me, my life got quieter and better. I focused on my job, built my portfolio, started saying no without rehearsing explanations in my head. I slept through the night without my phone buzzing. I checked my bank account without fear. I laughed more, not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was being drained from me anymore. One afternoon, months later, I ran into someone my parents used to know. She tilted her head and said, "I heard things were rough with your family." I smiled politely. They were, and then they weren't. She didn't push. People who've never carried other adults on their backs rarely understand what it costs, and I didn't owe her a demath. Here's what I learned. Family doesn't stop being family because you say no, but the people who only love you for what you provide will panic the moment you stop bleeding for them. They'll call you selfish, cold, ungrateful. They'll rewrite history so they don't have to face it. Let them, because the truth doesn't need defending when it's documented, and peace, real peace, doesn't come from fixing everyone else's problems. It comes from choosing yourself before you disappear completely. That Christmas night, as the lights blinked softly and the city hummed outside my window, I realized something that changed everything. I wasn't alone. I was free, and that was enough.